Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and respected speakers and delegates from India and overseas. My name is Shayan Malik, and it is my pleasure to be your host for the Next Generation Chemical and Petrochemicals Virtual Summit 2022. This summit has received overwhelming response from across the industry, and the theme of the summit is driving sustainable growth, which is quite apt keeping the global scenario in mind. Before we proceed, a little bit about Indian Chemical News. Indian Chemical News is an important online resource for news, views, analysis, trends, technology updates, and interviews with prominent leaders in the chemical and petrochemical sectors. Indian Chemical News is a media company with interest in online publishing and industry events related to chemical and allied sectors. The Next Generation Chemical and Petrochemical Summit, organized by Indian Chemical News, is evolving as one of the leading knowledge exchange platforms for experts and thought leaders to share success story which will help transform the industry in preparing the future roadmap. The virtual summit also offers an ultimate learning experience and provides unrivaled idea exchange opportunities for all global and local participants. Before we begin, I'm handing over the proceedings to Mr. Praveen Prashant, editor, as you all know, of Indian Chemical News, and Praveen has been a veteran journalist for over 30 years, with over 30 years of experience. So over to you, Praveen.
Thank you, Sayan, for the introductory remarks.
You're welcome.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and my respected speakers, inaugural session speakers. There is some urgent meeting, and he has been called. The minister has been called. Mr. Bhagwan Kuba has been called to the parliament. I hope if he is free from there, he will definitely join us to as a chief guest and inaugurate this Indian Chemical News NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemicals Summit 2022. Let me give you some statistics, and the theme that we have chosen is driving sustainable growth. So before I dwell into the topic, let me give you some numbers. These are Indian Chemical Council numbers, ICC numbers. The industry is covering more than 80,000 commercial products. Presently, $80 billion, or around that figure, and looking at 304 billion by 2025. These numbers are achievable. It's not that it's not achievable, and the captains of the industry are extremely busy trying to execute this in the respective, what we can say, states, both within India as well as outside India. If we talk about global numbers, we are the 6th largest producer of chemicals, 3rd largest producer in Asia in terms of output, ranked 3rd globally in terms of agrochemicals. In 16% of the, we cater to 16% of global dye stuff and dye intermediate production. If we talk about specialty chemicals, we contribute around 22% of total chemicals and petrochemicals market, and it is expected to increase at a CAGR of 12.4% from the $32 billion in 2019 to an estimated $64 billion by 2025. CRISIL suggests that Indian specialty chemical industry will outpace its Chinese counterpart and double its share in the global market to 6% by 2026 from 3 to 4% in fiscal 2021. In terms of investment numbers, we are expecting an investment of 8 lakh crores by 2025. And definitely, the way things are moving, with the support of industry, government, academia, we are all trying to see that we achieve these numbers of investments. And if we are able to achieve this number of investment, that goal is not far off, which is the 300 billion by 2025. We were just collating few of the numbers for the petrochemical sector, because this event is all about chemicals and petrochemical sector. The petrochemical sector has outperformed the overall chemical industry, with the growth in the foreseeable future expected to be around 12 to 14% year on year. There are about $16 billion worth petrochemical projects currently under implementation, and projects worth around $100 billion have been announced so far. And I believe majority of them will see the reality of the day. So with these two numbers of chemicals and petrochemicals, I see huge growth opportunity for the sector. And we are all working on the industry is all working on these strategies to tap the potential. So we are seeing greenfield chemical plants coming up. Companies are going for rapid expansion of the production capacity. New chemicals are being produced. The growth is directed towards making the country self-reliant or Atmanirbhar. The government is also developing an ecosystem to facilitate the growth. But the big question is, how do we achieve that growth in a sustainable manner? One school of thought is of the opinion that there is a lack of vision for the industry to grow. India has not changed its national chemical policy since 2008. Production-linked initiatives is a good measure, as it incentivizes the industry to quickly put up investment and start commercializing sales. Chemical industry also needs to be incentivized to push making India a global manufacturing hub. As the sector plays a significant role in enabling the growth of the Indian economy, the country needs to build a competitive landscape for the chemical industry. While the Indian chemical industry is moving ahead in the right trajectory, players need to focus on sustainability and decarbonization. Chemical companies need to prepare a roadmap for increased investment in green, recycling technology, digitalization to achieve their sustainability goals. The focus is also on green energy, and I see a lot of companies are focusing in that direction, where they are, what we can say, looking for partners in green energy ecosystem. Focus should also be on R&D. Why? Because if R&D is being taken care, we can scale up very fast. And I think with the past experience of so many years, definitely manufacturing is not a problem, but R&D is a problem. And all industry captains and academia needs to come together and see that we come out with green molecules or green chemistries or sustainable chemistry, so that we are able to collaborate and come up with these sustainable solutions, which is required for both industrial as well as consumer applications. The future of the industry lies in providing sustainable, secure, hyper-personalized interactions and experience across the chemical value chain, enabled by technology and the integration of processes, systems, and talent. One of the most important growth drivers of the economy is strong logistics and supply chain infrastructure. And we are seeing the rapid pace at which these PM Gati Shakti plans are being executed, whether it is port, whether it is road, or whether it is the airport infrastructure. In a nutshell, it is about what we can say coming together, taking the first step, moving forward, and then moving in a big way, so that we are able to capture on this large ecosystem, both globally as well as in India moving forward. Let me brief you about a few minutes on the NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemicals Summit. This is a 2-day summit. This is the second edition of the 2-day summit. We have around 18 sessions that we have. We have a session on chemical regulation, specialty chemicals, digitalization, HSC, petrochemicals, R&D, hydrogen, M&A, agrochemicals, plastic recycling, drones, future leaders, supply chain, paints and coatings, EPC, ethanol, achieving net carbon zero. The session on hydrogen is very important because we all know hydrogen supports a gradual transition towards lower carbon sources of energy. So even energy, what we can say, the EV sector is opening up. And here also, our friends from the industry needs or they are working together with other partners to encash on this opportunity which is coming up. So summing up, the NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemicals Summit is a step towards these. The theme of the summit is driving growth with sustainability. We have tried to bring sustainability on the forefront, and almost all panels are focused on sustainability as an underlying principle. The whole objective of this, putting sustainability at the front, is India should lead in terms of sustainability. Presently, Europe has taken the lead, but India should not be left behind and also take the first step and what we can say the big step towards sustainability, so that we are able to achieve this in the time-bound manner. The topic on plastic recycling and circular economy, ethanol, biofuels, achieving net carbon zero is all in a step towards attaining sustainability and moving forward. Thank you. Jai Hind. So let me take it up from here, and let me call upon my next speaker. I will just give a brief introduction, and I would request the speaker to join in. So we have with us Dr. Vaibhav Diwan. He's the Global Business Development Manager, GPC Group. A brief about Dr. Vaibhav Diwan. Dr. Vaibhav Diwan is a leading professional in the global chemical regulatory space. He's helping corporations to maximize on the global regulatory opportunities. He has been helping companies to grow, and he is helping them to solve their regulatory or the compliance issues, both for multinational as well as for Indian companies. So with this background, now I would request Dr. Vaibhav Diwan to give his inaugural speech. So over to Dr. Vaibhav Diwan.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Praveen, and also hello to all the fellow speakers in the inaugural session. So the topic being sustainable growth, and when I had an initial discussion with Praveen, I've been given the topic of speaking maybe on achieving sustainability through regulatory practices. Being in this field for some time, we have understood the concept of regulations as well as regulatory practices, but I wanted to just take it, from the basics of sustainable development as well as sustainable growth. Usually, sustainability as a concept is founded on the three pillars, the social, economic, as well as the environmental pillars. But by the definition of sustainable development or sustainable growth, it goes by like the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And I believe the key point here is without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. When we talk about sustainable development, there is a nice framework about sustainable development goals, which are 17 in number. And there is a nice paper by Mazzucato et al., which mentions there are 6 different types of transformations across the globe in different sectors that we need in order to achieve these, sustainable development goals. And one of the transformations that they talk about is energy decarbonization and sustainable industry. And that's where I believe the theme of this, conference or summit falls into place. The beautiful part in that whole paper, when I was reading across, was that all of these 6 transformations, they are interlinked with all the 17 sustainable development goals in one way or another, which means it's a complex network of, cause and effect, as well as how our impact goes across different goals in order to achieve these sustainable transformations. When we talk about regulatory practices, especially in the chemical industry, we have been primarily working in this sector for around 13 years now. There are many different types of regulations, standards. Some are mandatory, some are voluntary. And then there are regulations which fall in the category of technical barriers to trade. One of the founding ideologies or founding principles of these kind of regulations is to safeguard human and environmental health. And that's where the sustainable angle comes into role in the very foundation of the regulatory practices. Praveen also mentioned that the drive for sustainability and the front leaders has been, the European countries, so on and so forth. Although other countries had these regulations in place much before Europe, but you might have heard about a regulation in Europe, which is REACH, which we are familiar with, at least the chemical industry, which we are very familiar with, which goes by registration, evaluation, authorization, and restriction of chemicals. One of the key concepts which we believe it should be highlighted more in the regulatory space is, and it's the concept in REACH itself, is restriction is caused of the hazardous chemicals, but more importantly, it is about replacement of hazardous chemicals or the chemicals which are harmful for the human health and environment with more sustainable alternatives. And once we achieve that, that's the main objective of the regulation or the regulatory practice itself, which is achieved. I had a nice slide, but unfortunately I cannot show you, which said that in the global regulatory space in the whole world map, there are around 40 plus countries at present who has either implemented a regulation to regulate chemicals or are in transition state, and India is obviously one of those countries. In the Indian space, we have the draft Indian Chemicals Management and Safety Rules, earlier from the 1986 Environmental Protection Act. It is based on that. The legal basis lies on that. And again, it goes back to the founding ideology, that is the key objectives of the regulation is to protect and improve the quality of environment, as well as to protect, control, and abate environmental pollution. So with this, the idea with this regulation itself is also to go on the sustainable lines and in long term have sustainable alternatives to support the industry. In one of the last things that I just want to mention is, we have talked about, and we'll be talking about the sustainable growth part throughout these 2 days into different segments. But there are key drivers when it comes to regulatory practices, especially under chemical regulation, or for that matter, any other regulation as well. And those key drivers are divided into primarily 4 different categories. First, obviously, the government, where everything starts. Then comes the regulators who do the implementation part of things. Then comes the industry, which is the key, key player in the whole process. And inside the industry, I must say that the regulatory professionals who are working inside the industry are the key to achieving sustainability through these regulatory practices, because they are the people who are going to implement these things at the industry level, and then follow the regulations as well as come up with alternatives to drive the sustainable growth. And obviously, then there are downstream users or consumers. With this, I just want to, conclude with a small quote, which I personally really like. That it is by Simon Sinek. It goes as that the genius is in the idea, and the impact, however, comes from the action. So no doubt we have the genius idea, and we have been also using it, implementing it, having a holistic approach towards it for sustainability and sustainable growth. But true impact would come from our actions across the key drivers as well as the key stakeholders. Yeah, that's it from my side, Praveen.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vaibhav Diwan. Good to know that India is among the 40-odd countries where things are either in the implementation or in the transition phase. I hope the regulators are listening to it, and we hope to see this CMSR policy seeing the light of the day this year. Thank you, Dr. Vaibhav Diwan, for your speech.
Thanks.
Now I move to the next speaker, Mr. Maulik Mehta, Chief Executive Officer and Executive Director, Deepak Nitrite Limited. A brief about Maulik Mehta. He is leading Deepak Nitrite, a responsible chemistry company. That is the tagline of Deepak Group, Deepak Nitrite, and 638 tons of carbon emissions, and has the lowest thermal footprint plant in the world. He is responsible for the growth. Mr. Maulik. give his views. Over to Mr. Maulik Mehta.
Thank you, Praveen, and good morning to everybody else on the dais. All of you captains of industry, I think the country is looking over your shoulder to be able to achieve the kind of targets that the government, the industry, and the nation themselves deserve. So I want to just make a point. The glass is not full. The glass is not empty. The glass is not half full or half empty. I believe that the glass is refillable. We're living in very, very exciting times, but we're also living in very scary times. In the last 20 to 30 years, we have had to do what China did or what Europe did, either cheaper or more democratically. But over the last 5 years, we have seen a real decoupling between the world and China. And China's insatiable demand and massive supply overhang may not be the power engine that it was before, at least for the rest of the world, including India. And this also means that the building material of a brave new world is not what it used to be. The furnaces will not burn what they used to burn. The materials that we use for our daily consumption in the future will not be made of what they used to be. So I believe that sustainable chemistry comes not only from harnessing the power of chemistry, but also coupling the power of biology and coupling the power of physics in a way that has only been dreamt about before, where we are able to take inspiration from nature in the way that we design our products, in the way that we are able to consider the power of physics in the way that we drive chemicals, sustainable chemicals, reactions, all of these things. And therefore, a sustainable future, when we were in our 9th standard and 10th standard, we all had to do physics, chemistry, and biology. And then after that, most of us decided to gravitate towards one or the other. For someone like me, I gravitated away from all three of them. But I do believe that the future requires a confluence of all of these. And just to give you a couple of examples, there are new breakthroughs today where you are able to generate a mechanochemical reaction by grinding certain powders in a particular way so that they trap hydrogen within. Now, hydrogen, we all look at it as a potential source of energy in the future, and this will power our cars, this will power our industries and our furnaces. The challenge has always been moving it from point A to point B in an efficient manner. It will really be a breakthrough when it can be done by a simple transport of powder that has captured hydrogen in it. Similarly, solar. When you look at solar, when you look at the sun, it gives the earth enough energy in less than an hour to consume what we would consume through an entire year. But we are quite terrible at harnessing it, even though this has been maybe the grandfather of sustainable energy sources. Today, we have been working on it. So the future of solar and solar capture is not what the past was. There are a lot of new developments that have taken place in the last year. For example, new materials that are used for solar panels, things called perovskites. They are basically designed using a particular crystalline structure which can be painted onto other surfaces. Now, by themselves, they're great at being cheap and great at being able to store energy, but terrible at ruggedness. I mean, they can be destroyed moving from one place to another place in a lab. So you have to pair them with other materials, which may be good at the other two, but amazing at the ability to weather changes, no puns intended here. And the new breakthroughs in these fields will be ones where we are able to link what we have learned in chemistry and apply it to what we have learned in physics. And finally, the holy grail in that sense, when it comes to energy, looking at something like fusion rather than fission. Something that I learned recently and which may be new to a lot of people is, at the end of the day, whether it is nuclear energy or thermodynamic energy or any of these things, the way that the energy is transported continues to remain steam. That is what we use when we burn coal, natural gas, when we burn ammonia or hydrogen. We are going to continue to use steam. Nuclear is just one form of heating the medium available so that the steam that is generated can be maintained at a particular temperature and pressure to be able to power our industry. Now, when you're able to do it with fusion, you have to deal with safer materials rather than active radiotopic, massive atoms. You're able to use hydrogen, you're able to use helium, and you're able to use these to generate the energy that is required to heat the steam. The point that I'm trying to make is the infrastructure of the future is not going to be the building materials that countries like China have been, world-leading experts at, but they can become the materials that India becomes a leading expert in. And there is an incredible wealth of opportunity for a country like us, where we have the entrepreneurial grit and where we have a huge available domestic potential consumption, as well as an export opportunity, where we are looking at development of polymers, where we're looking at development of monomers, which will create a particular kind of property of the material more suited to the future of a sustainable world, which may not have been economical in the past. And this comes from the right kind of integration between government policies, industrial wherewithal, as well as academic learning. The best way to do all of these things is to be as collaborative and open in nature rather than close and inward looking. I have an extremely high degree of confidence that we have the tools that we need to build the world that we want, and it begins in India.
Thank you, Mr. Maulik Mehta, for your speech. Short and sweet. And I was really impressed. You talked about wealth of opportunity. Initially, on the startup space, we were low, but now we are leading the startup space globally. The domestic consumption is also needs to pick up and will definitely pick up as the economy grows from $3 trillion to 5 trillion and to 10 trillion moving forward. Then the export opportunity, we are presently pretty on the export part, and things will definitely move in that direction. Just wanted to give you 10 seconds. When we were trying to collaborate with the industry leaders for this event, I found a mad rush for people traveling. They were either traveling for their expansion, they were either traveling to meet their customers, they were either traveling to procure raw materials. So majority of them are traveling and seeing that whatever the opportunity is there, which is the $300 billion, they are seeing that these opportunities are being taken care from India itself. So I just wanted to close with this remark, and thank you, Mr. Maulik Mehta, for giving your speech.
Thank you so much, Praveen.
Now I move to the next speaker. Thank you, sir. Now I move to the next speaker, Mr. Rahul Tikku, Managing Director, South Asia, Huntsman India International. A brief on Rahul Tikku. In his role as a Managing Director for Huntsman India, Rahul is responsible for strengthening the company's leadership position through accelerated performance and sustainable growth in Indian subcontinent. So over to Mr. Rahul Tikku.
Thanks, Praveen, and good morning to everyone on this virtual summit. And Praveen, I must thank you also for starting this summit with this very refreshing topic on sustainability as its underlying theme. And I guess you've already helped this panel highlight the importance of sustainability, not only for today, but for also the future of this planet. So Praveen asked me to speak and illustrate with few examples on how products, processes, and technologies should evolve for achieving the future sustainability goals. But while I was trying to reflect on the topic on what and how I need to speak with examples, I received a call from my colleague in Europe who's currently vacationing in France. And he was telling me that Europe is currently reeling under extreme heat waves, with temperatures soaring about 45 degrees in France, which probably is unheard of, south of France. And Belgium is already above 40 degrees. And nobody is actually prepared for this climatic disruption, right? And if I only look at Europe and try to move my focus to India, I was in Rishikesh about 4 weeks ago, and I don't think it was any better there. And my past experience with getting closer to Himalayas has always been better weather and largely good degree of climate. And I think the whole world order is changing. And I also believe that something that was called as a climate change in past has already started hitting us. So the planet has probably started reacting now, and therefore I believe that our commitment needs to adapt accordingly, not in few years from now, but probably today. And I think largely the chemical industry has a good amount of solution for the sustainability challenges that are thrown at us. Our solutions can potentially make homes and buildings more energy efficient. It can reduce the demand for fuel for transportation on the ground and also in the sky, and also enable alternate energy solutions, which can largely increase the durability of the materials, to reduce the waste and also make processes more energy and water efficient. And if I have to sum it in one word, I think chemicals would largely carry the power of enabling sustainability. But the challenge is these are good statements and words, and if we have to convert this intent into reality, the hope largely hinges on research capabilities, like you were already mentioning, Praveen, earlier on, and our ability of these able and innovative scientists in India and around the world to think different and also think beyond cost innovation. And
Rahul, if you can switch off your video. Rahul, if you can switch off your video.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. I think.
Okay. So just let me know, Praveen, if I'm not audible. I'll try to alter my connection.
Hello.
I thought the line was good.
Yeah. Your audio is poor, so if you can switch off the video and continue with the audio part, Rahul.
Okay. Fine, thank you. So
please continue, sir.
All right. Okay. So I guess to convert this intent to reality, the hope will largely hinge on research capabilities and also our ability to think different and beyond cost innovation. And while R&D accounts for 3 to 5% of the total cost of the product, I think it also influences about 80% of how the products are sourced. Therefore, the potential impact around sustainable portfolio would always start with how we design that future portfolio around sustainable ambitions. And the other point also is, if you look at traditional cost-focused design to cost approach, I guess it should transform towards design to value. And what I read is a very interesting article from McKinsey, where they talked about the focus moving not only from design to cost towards design to value, but around design for sustainability approach. And I would just want to take a couple of minutes to elaborate this statement on two examples on how innovation can contribute to net zero, near zero, and carbon neutrality ambitions for the industry. One, I will probably start with the process disruption around what even Huntsman has tried to achieve, but I think it can be also an example for larger good of the industry. So recently, Huntsman launched a green innovation called Miralon, which is an excellent example of doing more with less. So what is Miralon? It's actually a technology which can help reduce the amount of carbon that is being released into environment through production sites. And the process largely works around breaking down methane gas, to produce a versatile structural carbon material, which is stronger than steel and can also be used in construction, transportation, and renewable energy ambitions. And a good endorsement of this technology of converting waste into a product was endorsed by NASA when they launched the recent UNO spacecraft, where mirror-on sheets were used to provide protection against electrostatic discharge, which eventually made its way to Jupiter. So I think this is one good area of looking at not only around innovation on product portfolio, but what are the processes around us and how can we make good use of that. From raw materials and product portfolio, I know there's a lot of focus coming in on how can we upcycle PET, but I'll give you one example of how we've tried to do it. So we've looked at upcycling a low quality PET scrap and transform it into energy saving insulation material, which is called Terol now. And in past 7 years, we have used an equivalent of about 5 billion PET bottles, which is good enough to insulate about 70,000 homes across the world. So I think that's also a very good example of looking at technology, but not only in terms of creating a product, but also looking at these mediums to recycle a technology where applications can be developed for a better good. And I think that's one very good option which actually gets into industry. And I think while we developed the ways of recycling low quality PET waste, we also thought through the applications that Terol could disrupt. And the result was that it ended up significantly upgrading our own product offerings in footwear or in spray foam insulation markets, while being 100% sustainably sourced raw material. So to sum it up, I think organizations should tweak their exposure towards sustainability tailwinds, and this will help them create a better enterprise value to revenue valuations and also enable stay relevant with a sustainable and green portfolio for our future needs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul Tikku. The message is very clear that if you are looking at enterprise valuations, you will have to go for sustainable processes and sustainable products and sustainable technologies. Thank you once again for your remarks. Now I move to the next speaker. Our next speaker is a stalwart in the petrochemical sector, Mr. B. Narayan, Group President, Reliance Industries Limited. Mr. B. Narayan has over more than 44 years of chemical industry experience. He has been involved with the implementation of all petrochemical projects in the Reliance Industries Group, Patalganga, Hazira, and Jamnagar complexes of Reliance. His area of expertise includes process licenses and engineering services for projects, project management, procurement of capital equipment, and supply chain management of input materials. Sir, your views are very important because India is on the cusp of expanding its manufacturing capacity to meet that target of $300 billion. So over to Mr. B. Narayan, Group President, Reliance Industries Limited.
Thank you, Praveen. You know, I'll give another perspective of as I heard Mr. Vaibhav Diwan mentioning about social, economic, developmental sustainability, and my definition would be a little different from that. Maybe not, I shouldn't say different, it's addition to that. And I would say an industry or any business has to be concerned of through three aspects when it comes to sustainability. Number one is concern on the depletion of planet's resources. The second is concern on the protection of environment. And the third is it has to be ultimately economically sustainable. Now, depletion of planet's resources, when it comes to that, you know, we have minerals such as ores-bearing metals, fossil fuels such as coal, natural gas, crude oil, etc., and other resources such as sweet water. So we need to ensure that these resources are not depleted. And And as long as the industry takes care of their processes and their methods and their developmental activities centered around reducing these requirements or consumptions, most welcome. The consumption of natural resources can be reduced resorting to several, we've been hearing in the industry, 3 hours, then it went to 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, such as reduce, recycle, reuse, reprocess, recovery, regenerate, rejuvenate. All of these you can apply and reduce the consumption of the resources. I'll just give you a few examples. Reducing. There is a new development of manufacture of nano urea. You may have heard, and I'm sure the people who are involved in the fertilizer industry have heard about this. And nano urea actually is so effective. A 500 or 300 milliliter of nano urea can replace 45 kilograms of normal urea. So naturally, you get more out of small quantities, and the product is becoming popular. And even in India, IFCO, NFL, and Rashtriya Chemical Fertilizers, they're all working on this, and they're, I think, producing also some quantities. And reduction of water, the natural resource, the most concerned product. In future, people say that it'll become blue, gold, etc., etc. And naturally, there is so much of emphasis in the industry today. Fortunately, people are very conscious that the usage of water is a matter of concern. Wherever there is possibility, including sanitary waste, is being recycled, reprocessed, and recycled into potable water, or at least service water. And there are many companies, even such as ours, is a zero discharge company. They become, and so there is absolutely no water discharge into the effluent stream. Coming to recycling, the second R. Currently, about 10 to 15% of the plastic, I would say PET, for example, is rather the petrochemicals or polymers. About 10 to 15% is recycled. And when it comes to PET, I think someone mentioned, I think it was Rahul Tikku, mentioned about recycling with the PET. And there are many ways of recycling. There is about 90% of the PET today is recycled through mechanical recycling. Just melting and producing something, which is, we also do it. We make fiber fill, which is downgrading what we say. And I was very enthused to hear Mr. Tikku saying that it's upscaling of poor quality PET bottles. Excellent thing. And so in our case, we process to make fiber fill, which is actually basically downgrading. But at the same time, we also do chemical recycling by taking the polymer, the PET bottles, and we do either glycolysis process or methanolysis process. We make oligomer, back to monomer, and that monomer is injected along with the virgin monomer to the extent of 5 or 10%, depending on the quality of the downstream product that you need. If the polymer is used to making polyester yarn or fiber, you need to have good quality. And so depending on that, the percentage injection is controlled. And then you have, other day I heard Under Armour, the fabric manufacturer, famous in the US, a brand name, along with IBM. IBM have developed a catalyst, and Under Armour, both of them working together to use a cloth and remove the additives and other things, and go back to the basic product. And so it's a very novel process, and I was also quite impressed with that new process. Then you have coming to the recycling. There is also a process called pyrolysis process, by which the waste polymer, all kinds of polymers, including PE, PVC, PET, all of them undergo pyrolysis process to convert that into basic oil, and that oil can be used as a feedstock in a naphtha cracker to produce olefins, and which are the basic building blocks for the polymers. And today in India, fortunately, because of the low labor cost, still recycling is comparatively cost effective, and expect from 10% to go up to about 50% very soon. Now, coming to the reuse side, so we normally use wooden crates for transporting materials, etc. And so there is a good example of our developing polymer crates, foldable polymer crates. They're reusable, and so you can replace the wooden crates very easily. And it's they're fairly simple approach. So coming to, I mentioned to you about number one is the concern on the depletion of the resources, and second is protection of environment. This is a big topic today. How do we reduce the carbon footprint? How do we capture the carbon dioxide that is emitted to the atmosphere today? And I think almost about 10% of the carbon emission is accounted for by chemical industries, and this is a subject which is there are a lot of research work going on, and the big players, big chemical companies such as Shell, BASF, even Reliance are working on capturing the carbon dioxide. But unfortunately, in India, if you capture carbon dioxide, there is no provision for sequestering the carbon dioxide. It is extremely expensive. We do not have a cavern available or a salt a mine available where we can store it, and we can use the carbon dioxide whenever it's required. But in Western countries and other countries outside India, it's quite now becoming popular. And also, it's a very important element today, because the planet, as one of the speakers mentioned, cannot afford to have more carbon dioxide emitted or greenhouse gases emitted to the atmosphere. And we are already very close to 1.2 to 1.3 degrees centigrade temperature rise. And we have a limit of 1.5 degrees centigrade expected to reach in 2030. And the planet has capacity to take another 400 billion tons of carbon dioxide. And we're already there. About 30 to 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide being emitted every year. So it's a big concern, and we can see the change of weather pattern. And so every industry should be concerned, and we are also simultaneously. And towards that, naturally, you have to either remove the process emitting carbon dioxide, or reduce or capture that carbon dioxide. So we're working on decarbonization. So whichever process is using a process by which there is carbon dioxide emission, we are working on removing that. And it is one of the example is so we use a lot of hydrogen in our refinery applications and petrochemical applications. The hydrogen is used by reforming the fossil material, and so our intent is to actually replace. Am I there? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Oh, I think I went off. I don't know why. Okay. So we are working on the hydrogen by electrolysis, and we're also working on power by solar, and so use that solar power to generate hydrogen. That hydrogen to be used, or rather replacing the hydrogen produced from fossil materials such as natural gas or liquid fuel or coal. So that's one initiative we have, and it is it's got a lot of fillip, and the industry has recognized it, and And also, the same hydrogen can be used for making ammonia. Then it becomes completely green ammonia. And then from ammonia, if you make urea, it becomes green urea. And this is one other area we are today working. And I'm also informed. And today, the steel industry also uses hydrogen in place of coke as a reducing agent. So the many steel industries make the DRI, direct reduction iron, by this. So there's a big scope to reduce the carbon footprint in these areas. One of the big carbon footprint countries, industry is steel, apart from power and transportation sector. So all of these areas, there is great potential for reducing that carbon footprint. And then you have the going forward, future designs and what kind of petrochemical industries will come up. Refineries will have to switch over to maximizing the petrochemicals because of the electric vehicles coming in. The requirement of transportation fuel will come down naturally, and also the vehicles are becoming more and more energy efficient. And so today the refineries produce about 65 to 70% of transportation fuels out of the crude they process, and only about 15 to 20% is converted into petrochemical feedstock or building blocks. So it is very soon every refining company is working in the world to increase the petrochemical production to 70% and reduce the transportation fuel to about 15 to 20%. So just reverse it. So that will be the trend. And there are new processes being worked on. Developmental work is going on. One of the examples is multi-cracking, multi-zone catalytic cracking, coupled with steam cracking. So that's a big process, big area. Sorry. Yeah, right, yeah. There is a new one, and second is to reduce the carbon footprint. The naphtha cracker or the gasoline cracking furnaces are being designed with electrical heating, and that electrical power can come from solar, so it becomes a green ethylene. And there is also a new area where the work is going on design of a rotary furnace without anything being burnt. It's just because of the very supersonic velocity they create in the rotary equipment, and creates a high temperature of about 1,000 degrees centigrade or 950,000 degrees centigrade. So the vaporized feedstock can be cracked, and you produce ethylene and propylene, and so mainly ethylene. And so that's a new development area. It's a good sign. And every refinery, every petrochemical plants today has to work on design of a plant with maximum energy efficiency, applying the pinch analysis, heat integration, and all of that. In effect, if they do that, achieve that, resultant is they need to burn less fossil materials for generating the energy. So the end of it, that should be the purpose. And also simultaneously protect the environment. Then, having said all this, this all makes sense ultimately if it results in economic process, and the business has to be sustainable economically as well. And naturally, one of the hindrance was high solar power cost. But today, fortunately, solar power cost has become quite attractive. And with that, the processes that are new processes that we are considering, or the companies are working on, they have to bear in mind about the economic viability of those processes, either in mid-term basis, if not on short-term basis, or at least in a long-term basis, to be sustainable. And fortunately, for about 80 large consumer brands today are planning to use the plastic produced on sustainable process, though they are a bit more expensive, but they're prepared to pay for it. And naturally, the consumers also, ultimately the cost would pass on to the consumers, and consumers are prepared to pay for it. And ultimately, over a period of time, it will become economically sustainable as well. With that, I think I will overshot my time. So, Praveen, this is a subject which is, you can go on for hours and days, and nobody would be able to do justice in 7 minutes talk. I was wondering how to condense my talk to 7 minutes. Sorry about it.
Thank you, sir. It's always an honor.
Thanks for inviting me to this this conference and this inaugural session.
So thank you, sir. It's always an honor to listen to you because you are a working encyclopedia for the chemical and the petrochemical sector, and there are a lot of things which we got to know about and what's happening both globally as well as in India, which is an eye-opening for all of us in this industry. Many thanks, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me call another veteran who comes from the chemical world, Mr. Rajendra V. Gogri, Chairman and Managing Director, Aarti Industries Limited. A brief on Mr. Rajendra Gogri. He has been integral part of Aarti Industries since its inception. Under his leadership, Aarti has always been at the forefront of innovation with many firsts to its credit. He has strong knowledge in and has provided sustainability for a sustainable growth. So over to Mr. Rajendra V. Gogri, Chairman and Managing Director, Aarti Industries Limited.
Yeah.
Over to Mr. Gogri.
Thank you, Praveen. Distinguished speakers, fellow panel members, participants, and my dear friends. I am happy to note that the last edition of the NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemical Summit received an overwhelming response, and I am quite sure this edition with the theme Driving Sustainable Growth will also be a success. In this sustainable growth journey of the industry, the specialty chemicals segment will have its own share of success. And I would like to share insights on the factors driving that success. As we all know, during the last 2 decades, a significant shift has been observed in the global specialty chemical industries, with emerging markets, particularly Asia, gaining production supremacy over developed countries. The key drivers of this shift include cost advantages in emerging markets with respect to equipment costs, logistics, labor, and stricter environmental norms in Western countries. Further, many global companies are looking to optimize their supply chain and exploring opportunity to shift closer to the demand centers. Within Asia, a significant business opportunity exists for Indian manufacturers as global corporations are striving to minimize the risk by reducing their dependency on China. In India, the per capita consumption level of specialty chemical is far below the global average, which provides significant opportunity to Indian chemical industries. Rapid urbanization and growing young population with disposable income will translate into rising demand for end user industries such as food processing, personal care, home care, etc. This will add to the specialty chemical sector's growth. At present, approximately 30% of Indians' chemical requirements are met by imports, indicating that there is an ample opportunity for import substitution, and government's push towards building an Atmanirbhar Bharat is aiding this growth. India accounts for approximately 4% of the global share of manufactured specialty chemical. The growth is expected to be led by substantial demand in end user industries. India's export of chemical hit a record of about 29 billion in FY22, whereas in FY14 it was around $14 billion. So in less than a decade, the time the industry has already seen over 100% export growth with potential to grow much more. It is a known fact that specialty chemical account for a major share of more than 50% of chemical exports, dominated by agrochemical, dyes, pigment, etc. Our export achievements indicate that the chemical industry has improved its competitiveness and established a strong presence in the global market driven by low-cost manufacturing, availability of skilled workforce, reputation for IP protection, and strong process optimization capabilities. Factors like competitive advantage due to the reduction in corporate tax, PLI scheme for various downstream industries, 100% FDI in the chemical sector through automatic route, the PCPIR policy, and other schemes promoting Make in India and significant improvement in ease of doing business also indicate a bright future for Indian chemical industry, at least for the next decade. We also need to have a targeted approach to attract FDI by multinationals. The domestic industry is strong enough in segments like agrochemical, active pharma ingredients, dyes, and pigment. However, for driving sustainable growth in the specialty chemical industries, companies need to invest in other high-value-added opportunities. Now the time has to come focus on growth of next generation businesses such as electronics, IT, electric vehicles, smart mobility, etc. These industries use a broad range of highly sophisticated specialty chemicals which are currently not being produced in India. Therefore, it is important to understand the key end markets and emerging trends where technical and market know-how can be combined with economy of scale to drive higher margins. As an industry, our target is to reach $300 billion by FY25, and for that we need to grow at CAGR of approximately 10% for the next few years. The untapped export potential of the Indian chemical industry is worth $18 billion. So to grab the export opportunity and achieve our targets, we need to significantly boost our domestic production. We need to quickly upgrade our existing ports, warehouses, feedstock storage facility, pipeline network for raw material supply, deep sea discharge lines, quality testing and certification centers. The government, in partnership with the private sector, should work on the creation of an all-India mapping of various linkages impacting the chemical sector. This could include mapping of warehouses, storage facility, ports and refineries to pipelines, linkage to factories to the common effluent treatment plants, power, utility, etc. It can serve as a ready reckoner for any domestic or foreign entity looking to set up a greenfield project. The system can be further integrated with the National Single Window System and Indian Industrial Land Bank, GIS-based portal, to provide a holistic view related to the approvals, connectivity, infra, natural resources and terrain, plot level information, line of activity and contract details. While considering greenfield and brownfield projects, land availability is one of the issues that the industry faces. The issue can be addressed by developing the existing PCPIs and also notifying more industrial development corporation areas clusters in the states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, etc. Apart from that, as we know, the sector requires continuous R&D and innovation to stay competitive in existing products and also to develop new sustainable ones. So to sustain and achieve long-term growth, the industry has to rely on R&D. To drive growth, the government of India must incentivize R&D and innovation. The earlier R&D incentive of weighted tax deduction of 200% can be again reinstated for the next 5 years. Government of India may also announce a first in India scheme for products not produced in India for the last 10 years. Other than that, the government of India may take necessary steps to utilize industry CSR funds for research and development activities at recognized academic and or national research institutions. The collective CSR funds can be channelized through an entity, preferably reputed industry association, to fund the research and innovation activity. The IP rights for any development can be retained by the research institute to be licensed to the domestic industry at a nominal charges. For technology advancement, the amended technology upgradation fund scheme, which facilitates improvement in investment, productivity, quality and exports in textile industry through technology upgrades, can be replicated in the chemical sector as well. Sustainability is a key factor for operating in the chemical sector. So matters of safety, health and environment need to be kept in focus. An institute for process safety to support new practices, technologies is important. Standard operational safety guidelines along with process safety guidelines should be developed for wider circulation. It will help the MSME players to adopt the best practices for sustainable growth. Our industry is one of the most skill intensive industry and there is a serious skill shortages we are currently experiencing. So efforts need to be taken on this front. Apart from industry, academia, collaboration, the government of India should take the lead and come up with more institutes like CPET. At last, I would say the government of India has taken a series of developmental reforms and initiatives. The Department of Chemical and Petrochemical as a torchbearer with its recent initiatives such as Chintan Sivir and Perspective Plan for Chemical Industry will provide the much needed guidance for long-term growth. The triple growth drivers such as increasing domestic demand, room for import substitution and expanding export opportunities are expected to aid the Indian specialty chemical market to grow at CAGR of 10 to 12% over the next 5 to 7 years. I hope that the sustained investments in technology and R&D, the Indian chemical industry will be well equipped to meet the growing demand. Thank you, and my best wishes to the participants of the NextGen Chemical and Petrochemical Summit 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Rajendra Gogri, for your candid views. You come up with a lot of suggestions also. I hope a journey towards sustainability and also towards IP that you talked about. The Chintan Civils, these are all Chintan Civils that we are doing in our own different way. And I hope these Chintan Civils will help us enlighten and help us in moving forward, taking the giant step that we are all thinking of. Thank you, Mr. Rajendra Gogri ji, once again. Our chief guest, Sri Bhupan Khuba, Union Minister of State for Chemicals and Fertilizers, New and Renewable Energy, Government of India. He has not been able to join because he has been called to Parliament, and so we are extremely sorry that he was not able to join for this inaugural session of NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemical Summit. Over to Sayan.
Great. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you very much. And thank you, esteemed panelists, for such an eclectic discussion. I would now like to call upon Mr. Yogesh Joshi, Director, Indian Chemical News, to extend his vote of thanks. Over to you, Yogesh.
Thank you, Sayan. Good morning, respected speakers, ladies and gentlemen. The inaugural session was very thought-provoking and enlightening. I'm sure the discussion has given a lot of food for thought to all the participants present here. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Vaibhav Diwan, Global Business Development Manager, GPC Group, Mr. Rahul Tikku, Managing Director, South Asia, Huntsman India, Mr. Maulik Mehta, CEO and ED, Deepak Natrite, Mr. B. Narayan, Group President, Reliance Industries Limited, and Mr. Rajendra V. Gogri, CMD, Aarti Industries Limited, for their guidance and consistent support to this initiative which ICN started a year back. Well, the minister was very much keen to join us, but due to a last-minute urgency, he could not join. But he did convey his best wishes for a successful summit. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all sponsors: Eliot Group, Global Product Compliance, Deepak Natrite, Ingeniero, Premier Tech, Huntsman, Carbanio, Payal Industrial Park. Thanks to our technology partner, EasyBiz Technologies, and industry associations like Alkali Manufacturers Association of India and CropLife India. My sincere thanks to Shayan Malik and our editor, Mr. Praveen Prashant, for conducting the session. Last but not the least, my sincere thanks to Team Indian Chemical News for their tireless efforts in putting up the second edition of NextGen Chemicals and Petrochemical Summit to 2022. Thank you once again to all of you for your consistent guidance and support. I hope you all will enjoy the upcoming sessions, which are full of knowledge and real-life use cases during both the days. Thank you and have a great learning day. Over to Sayan.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you once again, all the esteemed panelists. Yeah, with this we come to an end to the very, very, very engaging session. Thank you very much.